Mr Chairman, can I begin by first expressing my disappointment that the Minister in charge of the bill is not the Minister in the chair. I thought that perhaps under the cover of darkness she might have snuck back into the chamber through the back way to avoid the media and be here.
Now, the member would say he's not referring to the absence of a minister, but he is indirectly doing that, and I just caution him to not proceed down that line.
Mr Speaker, I'm sure you won't mind me saying, Mr Chairman, I'm sure you won't mind me saying that it's better in the Committee of the Whole stage to have the Minister in the chair, who is the Minister in charge of the chair, and when that Minister is here, then she might be expected to answer questions. But look, having expressed that disappointment, can I say that I at least acknowledge that in the chair is Chester Borrows, and Chester Borrows is not only Minister for Courts, but he's also the sort of man that could recognise a conflict of interest and avoid it, and if he made a mistake, tell the truth to the House about what he had done. So in that sense, the Minister in the chair is a distinct improvement over the Minister that is in charge of the bill. Can I just say, if the Attorney-General stops prattling on, if he wants to take a call, take a call. Perhaps he could stand up and explain to us why Judith Collins did meet with an unnamed official in clear breach of conflict of interest. If he doesn't want to take the call, then he should shut up, Mr Chairman, and I'll invite you to tell him to do that. Otherwise, I'll continue to ask him questions about his colleague, the Minister of Justice, and why the Minister of Justice shouldn't be relied upon to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I'm on my feet. Right, we'll debate part 2 of this bill from this point on.
I'm happy to do that, Mr Chairman. Can I say that I welcome this bill and the improvements that it makes, but express another disappointment that, notwithstanding the importance that I'm sure the Minister in the chair would say attaches to the provisions in this bill, to ask the question why it's taken 2.5 years to get this bill back to the Committee of the Whole when these rights are being denied to victims, when I think every party in the House supports this bill. This is the sort of bill that you would have thought would have been facilitated through the House. We won't hold it up unnecessarily. We've indicated we're showing support for it. Once again, we have a bill that takes damn near 3 years from the point that it's introduced to the point that it goes through. And there's no reason, other than the incompetence of the management of this House, that that shouldn't have happened with this bill. Mr Speaker, this part of the bill deals with amendments to the Child, Young Persons and Their Families Act, and the purpose of the clauses in this bill are to ensure that victims' rights in the adult jurisdiction are applied in the youth justice jurisdiction, and I support that absolutely. It's also about increasing the participation of victims at the hearings in the youth court and providing support for those victims. And I want to come back to Chester Borrows to ask a question about the nature of the support that will be provided to victims that appear in the youth court. As the Minister, as Minister for Courts, will be aware, court services for victims aren't currently available in the youth court. So I'd very much like the Minister in the chair to take the next call and explain to us whether the court services for victims will now be available for victims appearing in the youth court. It's a valid question. I'm sure the Minister will have the answer for that. But the reason that I ask the question about whether those resources will be available, and still the Attorney-General prattles on, the reason that I ask about that, sir, is because in the regulatory impact statement, it states this: agencies have indicated that to successfully implement some of their proposals, they'll have to look at reprioritising funds from other areas. Now, the fact that the agencies say that suggests to me, Mr Chairman, that no additional resources have been provided to ensure that the rights that we are supposedly giving to victims will be backed up by the services that are there to ensure that they get those services and those rights are upheld. So it's a valid question to ask the Minister whether court services for victims will be available. If so, how will they be funded? If it's reprioritisation, can he assure us that those aren't funds taken from another part of the justice system that will diminish the rights of victims in that part of the service? And when they say that if they can't prioritise, let's get that right, if you can't reprioritise, then, Mr Chairman,
Honourable Phil Gold.
Mr Chairman, then this will result, and I'm quoting from the regulatory impact statement, this will result in pressure on services and service delivery may be affected. That's bureaucraties for the fact that if there's no money there, they won't be delivering the services properly, and maybe they won't be delivering the services at all. And I think, Mr Chairman, that those are valid questions to ask to the Minister and the Chair, and I will invite Chester Borrows to take the call after I've finished and address those questions. Members on this side of the House believe that that's the very sort of thing that the Committee of the Whole is there for, and the Minister should be prepared to answer it. Chester Borrows is one of the better of the ministers. He will probably be willing to do that. Mr Speaker, I want to say that the things that I think are really important here are, firstly, that we do get the recognition of the automatic right of the victim to attend a youth court hearing. That is not currently the case. It will become the case. Having said that, in the youth jurisdiction, family group conferences are perhaps the best area where victims can participate in a process and where the process is properly restorative. Because at the moment, the victim is encouraged to attend the family group conference, to have a say on reparation, to have a say on rehabilitation for the offender, to express how the actions of the offender have affected them. In fact, New Zealand, under a Labour government, led the world in 1989 in making these sort of provisions for restorative justice, for the family group conference, for the victim to be part of the process and not excluded from the process. That's great. I'm not sure why we did not in the past include the youth court jurisdiction in this. And I can back up the words of the principal youth court judge, who noted that, sadly, under the status quo, the court is often left without any information on the victim. That's plainly, Mr Chairman, unsatisfactory. This remedies that, and it makes sense for the judge to have complete information about the offence when sentencing a young person in the youth court. There is absolutely no reason that I can understand why the age of the offender should reduce the rights of victims that they have under the Victims' Rights Act. So we are supporting this part of the bill because those two areas are remedied. The Ministry of Justice rightly has recommended that victims should have the right, the automatic right to attend, that they should be able to provide a victim impact statement. That's really important, and that there should be amendments to clarify the application of the Victims' Rights Act in the youth jurisdiction, Mr Speaker. The clauses in the bill that are important, I think, are 35 and 38. 35 sets out the rights of the victim to be consulted when a hearing is being held into the custody or the potential custody of the child or young person, and the prosecutor must make reasonable efforts to ascertain the views of each of the victims. That's important. The Commissioner of Police must inform each victim of the order made by the court and any conditions, such as conditions on bail, that are applied. So this is a sensible provision. It's not a political party-oriented clause. It's been recommended by the Ministry of Justice. It makes sense. It's supported by the principal youth court judge. Mr Speaker, the other area, Mr Chairman, the other area is clause 38, which sets out the entitlement of the victim to be present in the youth court and also to have, I think the Select Committee made this amendment, to have a support person alongside the victim as acting as a representative of them or a support person for them. I think that that makes sense as well. The other clause in 38A and B is areas where the victim should be notified of certain things. When young people abscond from custody, of course the victim should be told about that. If the offender dies, then obviously that's a piece of information, however regrettable the death of the young offender might be, that the victim is entitled to. So I think this is a good area. I just come back to the Minister. I know he's been taking advice from officials. Be good to know why it took so long to get this bill back, but particularly good to know whether the resources are there to provide court services for victims, whether the resources are there to ensure that the rights of the victim will actually be delivered upon, and where that money is coming from. Was there any new money provided for the victim support services, or is this going to be stolen from another area that will detract from the ability of the justice system to deliver elsewhere?
Mr. Chair.
Honourable Chester-Borrow.
Mr. Chair, I rise in response to the comments made by the previous speaker and speaker's previous